My friend, today I'd like to show you one of the absolute best possible ways of getting better at guitar fast, and it's not what you might think. So in this video I want to show you some very cool and very practical exercises that are not just great for your picking technique or your fretting hand technique, so they are not just technical benefits with those exercises. What these upcoming amazing workouts are actually about is making you a better sounding, more confident guitar player, because we're talking about the very important topic of scales today. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but at least 90% of guitar players, especially self-taught players, are approaching scales in a completely wrong and ineffective way, especially in their practice routines. Maybe you can see yourself in that a little bit. Most players just look up scale boxes whenever they want to work on scales, and they always practice them from the root note. So they visualize that one special note the scale is starting from, and then they just play it either up or down, or they move it to a different key, always starting on that first note that they memorize, which in a practical context will always make you sound like a total beginner, because nobody wants to hear scale phrases that always start on the root note. If you want to sound like a professional player, at some point you have to practice your scales a little bit differently. So with today's first workout that I want to show you, you're playing through all the minor modes right away, so one mode at a time, starting with the natural minor scale or the Aeolian scale. You're then going to the Dorian, Phrygian and Locrian mode. And here's the very important twist: you're not starting with the root note. You're actually starting on the third note with this exercise, and you're playing it descending until you end up with the root note. So check out the first exercise and how you're actually targeting the root note by not starting with it, but by ending with it as a satisfying conclusion for each phrase. Alright, so for this exercise I was working with alternate picking all the way through, so always down, up, and I'm basing this on the very common 3-note per string scale shapes. So I was playing 3 notes on the E string, followed by 3 notes on the B string. That's where the picking pattern turns around. So down, and then up, down, up. Then one more scale position on the G string, before I end with the root note with an upstroke on the D string right here. So this will teach you not to always start your scale phrases on the root note like this, and so on. You're actually starting from anywhere in the scale, for example from the third note, from C right here. And when I'm starting this scale phrase in a practical context, in my mind, I know that I want to go to the root note just to finish for a satisfying, nice harmonic ending. So on one hand, it's a nice alternate picking exercise because the picking pattern turns around. But what's much more important is the theoretical concept right here. So playing from anywhere in the scale while you already know the destination you want to go through, which is the root note in a lower position in the scale. And the next big deal is that I'm doing this for all the minor modes. So after doing this for Aeolian, for this exercise I move to Dorian in the second measure. So the exact same scale phrase, but not in A Aeolian, in A Dorian. And as you can see in here, we just have one note that changes when we move from Aeolian to Dorian. And it's this note right here. So F on the 6th fret on the B string turns into F sharp for Dorian. That's the interval or the note that makes Dorian sound like Dorian. So by just playing the first 2 measures of the exercise, I'm internalizing the change from Aeolian to Dorian, which is just this one note that I have to adjust. So A Aeolian or the A natural minor scale. And then A Dorian with F sharp in there. So this exercise is already great for identifying the small difference from Aeolian to Dorian and also really hearing it. Then for the third measure, I'm moving to Phrygian, and once again there's just one note that changes when we compare this to the natural minor scale. So in the first measure for the natural minor scale, I'm sure you remember, we were playing C, B and A. But for Phrygian we have that characteristic half step above the root, so we're playing B flat right here on the 6th fret on the high E string. And since that note is repeating, right here we would play B again. We also play B flat right here, so on the 3rd fret on the G string, before we end up with A once again on the D string. So here's the entire phrase for A Phrygian. So when you play this exercise and every single scale, I really want you to think about the notes and the intervals in there. So don't just memorize how the pattern looks like or which frets you have to press on. Also memorize the differences, like how I'm swapping the major second for a minor second to get the Phrygian scale, or how I'm swapping the minor sixth to a major sixth to get the Dorian scale. That's what you want to internalize right here. And then of course we have one more minor mode we want to go through, and that's the A Locrian scale, the craziest sounding one. So you have two changes compared to the natural minor scale right here. In addition to that minor second, you also have E flat right here. So E becomes E flat on the 4th fret on the B string, but the rest is essentially the same. By the way, my friend, all the awesome exercises I'm showing you today are part of the brand new scale practice package that I just made for my awesome Patreon community on patreon.com/Bernd. That's my online guitar academy, and you can become my student by just clicking the link down below. I would love to have you over there as well. I'm proud to say that I could help over 40,000 guitar students over there already with reaching their goals on the instrument by posting weekly practice packages like this brand new scale practice package that comes with slow and fast play-along exercise videos, PDF tabs, guitar profiles, backing tracks, and much more. And all of my guitar students over there also have access to my full 30-day guitar courses, like the awesome 30-day alternate picking masterclass, or the 30-day legato course and the 30-day sweep picking course. So you get full access to a course library that's literally worth over $5,000 by now by just clicking the link down below and joining today, in case there are any slots left for the month. So I can't wait to see you inside and to finally welcome you as my guitar student over there. In the meantime, let's continue with all the other awesome exercises I want to show you this week. Alright, my friend, as you could see, I also want to talk about the major modes, of course, to complete all the modes. So for this exercise, I'm keeping the practice structure from the previous workouts. I'm starting on the 3rd note of the scale, which is the major 3rd in this case. And I'm playing until I reach my target destination, which is once again the root note on the D string. So I just start out with the C major scale. But did you know that when you just change one note and move to the Lydian scale, you get awesome sounds like this? So that kind of really cool dissonance that doesn't really remind you of major sound, it's more of a dark and mysterious vibe. In order to get that, I'm simply changing F to F sharp, which is also the same thing we did for A Dorian. So the minor and major modes are also connected. So in the next measure, you can see I'm playing the C Lydian scale by just changing this one note. So here it is on the 11th fret on the G string, I'm playing F sharp instead of F, as I did in the previous measure for the Ionian scale. F sharp is the note I want for Lydian. And then I'm continuing until I reach C right here. Very subtle difference, but it brings out this really cool dissonance. So it really pays to know that the note that brings you that cool Lydian sound is located right here in the scale. And for the final one, I'm also doing C Mixolydian, which is a scale that's often associated with jazz or blues because it features that minor 7th. And once again, that's just one note that changes compared to the C Ionian scale that I was playing in the first measure. So I'm swapping the major 7th in the scale for a minor 7th. And that's the only thing that changes when we compare the Mixolydian scale to the C major scale. So right now, with just these two easy exercises and examples, you were playing through all the modes. We were starting with the minor modes since they are more interesting for most rock and metal players, and then move to the major modes. So when you practice this, as soon as you download the brand new scale package on Patreon, that also comes with a full daily scale practice routine workout that you should do every single day, because this one takes you through all the most important scales on a daily basis so that you can finally really unlock the neck. So no more blind spots across the neck track where you're not exactly sure what to play and how to play over certain songs. When you practice this full workout that comes with the new scale practice package, you will be able to play through all the scales on a daily basis, and you also know how they work and how to use them. By doing what we just did, actually analyzing the notes and intervals that you're playing and how they are just small differences when you move to one scale to another scale, so you don't have to study endless scale diagrams and remember all those positions in your head. You just have to remember how all of these scales are related to each other and that they're just minor differences when you compare them in detail. That's what I will show you in the new scale practice package on Patreon, and I'm already happy for you because this will finally unlock all the scales across the neck in a very short time frame. So have a lot of fun with that. But right now I also want to check out some more interesting scales because the modes are nice, but there are also some more advanced sounds I want to show you. Let's move to G for the next exercises and explore some interesting sounds surrounding the G minor scale. Alright, so as you could see and hear, I'd like to explore some sounds surrounding the G minor scale so that we're not always talking about A and C. You should be familiar with the first scale position right now. We're basically just moving it down a whole tone. That's the G Aeolian or G minor scale. So the same scale position and phrasing we looked at with the first exercise, just one whole tone down in the context of G. But then we're going into one of my favorite scales, the G harmonic minor scale. And once again, we're not playing it from the root note, we're playing it from the third, and then we're descending in the scale until we end up at our target note, which is the root note here on the D string. And I think it was pretty easy for you to identify which is the characteristic note of this scale. It's pretty obvious in that case. It's F sharp right here on the 7th fret on the B string. So that's the characteristic note of harmonic minor, which gives us this really cool exotic dark kind of tone. But once again, the rest of the notes stay exactly the same. It's just that 7th note that's raised a semitone. And that's super useful information because if you already internalized the minor scale pretty much all across the neck, which is quite easy, you just have to change that 7th note in the scale, you just have to raise it by a semitone and you can immediately play the harmonic minor scale all across the neck, which is super cool. And then we move from harmonic minor to melodic minor, which is a very underused kind of sound that I also personally don't use that much, and whenever I'm practicing it I realize, wow, this is actually very cool and I should use that more often. This one is a little bit different compared to the natural minor scale, but it's actually kind of just a small adjustment when we compare it to the harmonic minor scale. So I still have F sharp right here on the 7th fret on the B string, but we have some further changes, as you can see here. So the whole scale position looks and sounds like this. So very interesting, because you have both F sharp in here, the characteristic interval of the harmonic minor scale that you already know. It gives you this cool dissonance, but you actually also have another interesting note. You have E, which is the major sixth that we usually associate with Dorian. So when you accent and really bring out those notes in your guitar solo, your licks will sound much more interesting right away, because if you only study the harmonic minor scale box and where to put your fingers and you just keep that scale diagram in your mind, you actually don't know which notes to land on to make your solo sound special and to really bring out the sound of each scale. That's why exercises like this are so extremely effective, because they're not just technical for your fingers and for your picking technique, they will make you a better sounding player. And my friend, to finish things off, as a big reward for staying until the end of this video, I also want to show you some super exotic sounding scales. Those are some of my favorites and kind of secret tips. Let's take things from G to E to keep it interesting and look at the Byzantine, Hungarian minor and altered or super Locrian scales. Alright, so these scales deserve the description of exotic in my personal opinion. They sound really cool and quite different from the rest. The first one, the Byzantine scale, actually starts in a way that's relatively easy to memorize, because the E string position and B string position are the same. And due to the broader spacing of the intervals in this scale, combined with the notes that are very close to each other, like with the classic Phrygian kind of interval and sound, you get that really, really cool, exotic and interesting sound. Very, very cool. And the pattern on the G and D strings is also quite interesting. Very cool sound. And for me, this very special scale falls into the category of sounding exotic, but not too far out, because some exotic scales can end up sounding a little bit dissonant, and you just work really hard on memorizing and learning a new scale, the intervals and how it works. And then you actually don't really end up using it at all because it simply sounds a little bit too weird. But this one to me is the perfect combination of exotic and new to the listener's ear, because it's not used very often, but it still offers some interesting, quite harmonic ideas that are not too crazy. So definitely one of my favorite ones of today's video, and I'd say one of my secret tips. The next one is called the Hungarian minor scale, and there are different scales that are sometimes referred to as Hungarian minor. This one is my personal favorite one. It starts off innocently enough, and you will recognize the beginning of the scale on the E string, because it's exactly the same compared to the natural minor scale, just the minor third, major second, and then the root note. But then we have the first change already. So this is what we know from the harmonic minor scale already, but it gets a little bit crazier. So it continues like this on the G string, which is the biggest difference compared to all the other scales we looked at so far. Some very interesting notes when I play them with the root notes, when you hear the full intervals right here. So those are the core sounds of the Hungarian minor scale to me. It sounds very, very dark, but mysterious and interesting, and it's also not too far out. So I actually do use this scale for anything that's more dark and dissonant that I do. I used it for my song The Orbitoclast, for example, from my first album, which is very dark and kind of spooky, but also very interesting sounding. And the last scale I want to show you today is the altered scale. That's also called the Super Locrian scale, but I guess altered scale is more popular. That's a scale you can actually also use over dominant chords, and it will make you sound like a jazz pro. So jazz and fusion players like to use this crazy scale over dominant chords. So you have that minor second that you already know from scales like Phrygian. Then you have the tritone in there as well, both the major and the minor third. And of course then once again that minor second before you go to the root note. So tons of really, really interesting notes in this one. This one is definitely the craziest one, and you have to be a little bit careful with using it. But if you're looking for something that sounds a little bit more advanced over dominant chords, for example, and you want to bring out some jazz or fusion style playing in your sound, that's the scale I would definitely recommend looking into. All right, my friend, to get the absolute most out of this video and to really internalize all of these scales, just click the link down below and download the full brand new scale package on patreon.com/burn. That's my online guitar academy. As I mentioned earlier, you not just get access to this brand new practice package, you also get access to my 30-day guitar courses over there, like the awesome guitar technique courses or the music theory courses, and even some home recording courses if you want to make professional sounding music at home. It's an absolute no-brainer. If you enjoy my content here on YouTube, you should definitely take it to the next level and become my guitar student for real. All you have to do is click the link down below, see if there's still some slots left for this month. I hope to see you inside. Have an amazing day. Greetings from LA, and bye-bye.